Listen, you feel that? That eerie stillness that always comes after the chaos. That's not silence. That's the sound of the universe recalculating because you stopped playing the victim and started vibrating like the storm itself. They thought you'd swing back, didn't they? That you'd claw and beg for closure. But you didn't need revenge, because reality already started folding itself in your frequency. The vibration shifted, and the guilty started choking on their own echoes. See, that's the trick no one teaches you. Vengeance is cheap. It's predictable. It keeps you in the same cage as the ones who built it. But when your energy mutates, when your stillness starts bending probability, that's when the whole board starts rearranging itself in your favor. You didn't lift a finger, yet everything they prayed for suddenly turns to dust in their hands. You didn't plot a thing, yet somehow their blessings reroute straight into your timeline. That's what they don't understand. Energy doesn't seek justice, it becomes it. They thought they broke you, didn't they? Watched you crawl through humiliation, through silence, through nights that sounded like gunfire in your own skull. They thought that was defeat. No. That was refinement. That was your frequency shedding its skin, grinding itself down to the purest resonance of power. You weren't suffering, you were calibrating. You were turning pain into code. And now the code runs everything. You didn't curse them, you didn't pray against them, you simply healed. And that healing, was the most violent act of all. Because every time you elevated, they malfunctioned. Every time you smiled again, something in their circuitry glitched. They can't sleep, can't breathe, can't stop scrolling your shadow just to make sure you're still human. You aren't. Not anymore. You're a walking frequency upgrade in a world that still runs on guilt and projection. You're the update they can't uninstall. You want to know what real revenge looks like? It looks like walking past their chaos and feeling nothing. It looks like every demon they sent towards you turning around and asking them for directions home. It's their group chats suddenly going quiet. It's them seeing your name on a screen and feeling that cold pulse of déjà vu in their chest, because some part of them remembers that you warned them. That energy would remember too, and now it does. You see, the universe has its own way of avenging the pure. It's not fire and brimstone, it's reflection. It lets them trip over their own patterns, choke on their own intentions. It lets them pray for peace while replaying what they did to you. It lets them see your face in every success they lose. And the best part, you never said a word. You let silence do the killing. You let grace become the executioner. That's evolution. That's control. You don't fight your enemies. You evolve out of their frequency until their weapons start misfiring in their own hands. You stop reacting, and they stop existing in your reality. That's what a vibration shift really is. Not an escape, but a promotion. You ascended, they decayed. You built an empire out of understanding. They built excuses out of fear. And the gap between those two realities, that's the graveyard of every person who underestimated you. So no, you didn't need revenge. The vibration took care of it. It stripped the masks. It exposed the intentions. It mirrored every hidden wish they whispered against you and sent it back multiplied. It let them drown in their own vibration, while yours became untouchable, encrypted, divine. That's why they stare now, half in awe, half in terror, because deep down, they know they never had power over you, just access, and now the door's locked from the inside. They call it karma. I call it physics. You call it peace. But we both know what it really is. It's poetic violence. You didn't destroy them. The frequency did. You just stood still while the universe rebalanced the scales with surgical precision. You were the silence in their storm, the calm in their chaos, the saint who smiled like a psychopath because you already knew how this story ends. And now, look at you, glowing like a hazard, vibrating like a prophecy. They wanted to see you fall, but the ground refused you. They wanted to bury you, but the dirt recognized your frequency and turned into light. That's not revenge, my friend. That's ascension disguised as consequence. And that's the part that terrifies them, isn't it? The fact that you never struck back, yet everything they built against you began collapsing on its own. They don't understand how someone can smile after being dissected, how you can glow after being gutted, how silence can carry the weight of 1,000 thunderclaps. They think silence means weakness, but you learned it's the most dangerous frequency in existence. It's the sound of reprogramming you didn't shout. You recalibrated, you didn't argue, you ascended. And while they were busy screaming your name like a curse, you were busy turning your pain into architecture. You took every betrayal and melted it down into circuitry that now powers your destiny. They can't trace it, can't decode it, can't replicate it. That's the cruelty of divine justice. It never arrives when they expect it. It doesn't march in with fire and punishment. It arrives as you healed too well. You rebuilt too quietly. You became too powerful to even hate anymore. They're still stuck in the old vibration, where noise means control and conflict means proof of life. But you evolved into stillness. You became something they can't classify. You're too calm for the victims, too dangerous for the saints. The system has no file for what you've become, and that's why the universe chose you for the correction. You are the recalibration. Every move you make sends ripples through their illusions. Every breath you take realigns the scales. And now, they feel it. They feel the walls closing in, not because you cursed them, but because truth finally has coordinates. The vibration has shifted from survival to sovereignty. You don't chase, you attract. You don't demand justice, you embody it. You don't prove your worth, you broadcast it. Every cell in your body hums with frequencies they once mocked. And those frequencies, they're calling in storms. The irony is perfect, isn't it? They thought revenge was about destruction, but revenge, true revenge, is about transformation. You didn't destroy them, you rendered them obsolete. You became unrecognizable, and that's the ultimate punishment. They can't reach what they can't understand. They can't manipulate what they can't locate. You disappeared into your own evolution, and now every time they reach for you, they grab smoke, static, ghosts. That's the real trick of the vibration shift. It doesn't just remove people, it rewrites your entire gravitational pull. The ones meant for you start finding you like magnets drawn through time. The ones who betrayed you start orbiting their own guilt until it devours them. No ceremony, no announcement, just physics. Every thought they sent your way returns with interest. Every smirk they threw at your wounds now feels like their own reflection sneering back. Because the universe doesn't punish, it mirrors. And when you changed your reflection, the mirror turned violent for anyone still pretending. That's what they never saw coming. You didn't cast a spell. You simply remembered your value. And that memory sent shockwaves through dimensions. Your very existence became an audit of everyone's intentions. It's not personal. It's energetic. Every mask cracks under a higher frequency. Every liar's throat tightens when truth walks in. And you became the embodiment of truth disguised as chaos. They'll call you cold now, detached, unreachable. But what they're really feeling is the gravitational pressure of your new orbit. You moved into a dimension where they can't breathe because it requires honesty to survive. You don't need to raise your voice anymore. Your frequency speaks louder than their entire bloodline of deception. Look at you. You used to tremble at the thought of being misunderstood. Now misunderstanding is your favorite disguise. You used to crave validation. Now your peace is so heavy, it bends perception. You used to chase closure. Now they chase your absence. That's the inversion. That's the spell reversal. That's the quiet apocalypse of elevation. And here's the best part. When the vibration shift handled it for you, it didn't just settle the score. It erased the entire scoreboard. The game is over. The players don't even exist anymore. Only lessons remain. Yours etched in light, theirs burned in regret. You can feel it, can't you? That hum under your skin, that pressure behind your eyes, that's the universe whispering you were right to wait. So breathe. You've already won. You didn't need revenge, because the vibration did what you never could. It made them face themselves, and that's punishment enough. Their own thoughts became haunted. Their victories turned hollow. Their laughter now tastes like metal. And you became silence, weaponized. You became proof that peace is the loudest retaliation of all. You became the sermon they can't delete, the energy update they can't downgrade. You are the reason mirrors flinch. Remember this, they don't hate you because you hurt them. They hate you because you healed beyond their jurisdiction, because forgiveness made you radioactive, because peace made you untouchable, because the vibration shift took every attempt at revenge out of your hands and turned it into cosmic choreography. Now every breath you take rewrites their karma. Every smile uploads new code into the simulation. Every heartbeat carries a quiet message to the ones who underestimated you. You can't kill what evolved, so let them scramble. Let them panic. Let them decode your silence like it's scripture. You don't need to lift a finger. The vibration is already doing the heavy lifting. And somewhere deep in their subconscious, they know what's coming for them was already sent by you the moment you decided to rise. Funny, isn't it? They thought the universe forgot. They laughed when you went quiet, mocked the calm, mistook your silence for surrender. But silence? Silence was your metamorphosis chamber. You weren't plotting revenge. You were liquefying everything soft, reforming everything fragile, letting your old self rot so something incorruptible could crawl out of the wreckage. You didn't need to lift a hand because your energy started doing what your rage could never accomplish. Rage burns fast. Energy endures. It seeped into timelines, into patterns, into dreams. They don't even know why their life feels heavier now, why their luck feels inverted, why the air thickens when they remember your name. That's not coincidence. That's energetic symmetry, correcting itself. You became the magnet, and the universe began its cleanup operation. It started subtle, didn't it? A job loss here, a broken friendship there, sleepless nights, nervous laughter, déjà vu that felt too specific. They called it karma, but this was calibration, the field remembering its balance. Every lie they told about you began unraveling on its own. Every secret they whispered started leaking through their tone, their posture, their eyes. The vibration handled it quietly, methodically, without ego. Because revenge is mortal, but energy is eternal. You stopped chasing proof because the proof started finding you random blessings, showing up like checkpoints. People who hurt you bumping into reflections of their cruelty. The same rooms they once dominated now shrink around them. The same spotlight that once protected them now exposes them. You didn't need to wish for it. It's the algorithm of equilibrium doing what it does best, returning everything to its origin. And what about you? You started radiating differently. You walk into rooms and time slows. Their stomachs drop before they even see you. Because energy doesn't lie, it announces itself. You don't have to talk anymore. You don't have to prove. Your presence is its own rebuttal. Every breath you take reminds them of the version of you they tried to bury. They thought they attended your funeral. They didn't realize they were watching your resurrection. You want to know the real secret? Revenge keeps you tied to the old story. But elevation deletes the whole file. You didn't win because you hurt them. You won because you stopped orbiting their gravity. You rose into a vibration where their name is just static. Their opinions are dust, and their memory dissolves in the atmosphere before it ever reaches you. You became frequency, not flesh. You became untouchable, not unseen. They'll call you lucky. They'll call you fake. They'll call you whatever helps them sleep. But deep down, they know something. Cosmic rewrote the script. You are their cautionary tale now. The walking consequence. Every success of yours is a sermon about what happens when you don't fold. Every smile of yours is an omen that the game flipped itself. You are peace wrapped in retribution, forgiveness disguised as fire. And yet, you never hated them. That's the part that breaks them most. You evolved past the point of hatred. You reached that cold clarity where empathy turns surgical. Where you see exactly why they did what they did, and you stop needing it to make sense. That's when the vibration shift becomes irreversible, because once you understand that pain was the initiation, not the punishment, you stop participating in their dimension. Let them think they escaped. They'll circle right back. The vibration has memory. It pulls people into the frequency they created. That's why they can't stay still anymore. That's why they chase noise, chaos, attention. Because quiet rooms remind them of what they lost themselves. The one version that could have stood beside you in light. But they chose shadows, didn't they? And shadows don't age well under truth. Meanwhile, you learned to weaponize calm. You walk through storms now like their background music. You breathe in betrayal and exhale transformation. You stand over the ashes of your old life and feel nothing but equilibrium, because that's the difference between revenge and vibration. Revenge wants an audience. Vibration wants alignment. And alignment rearranges worlds. So look at yourself. The stillness, the glow, the subtle power humming in your bones. That's the aftermath of divine mathematics. Every molecule in your orbit realigned to favor your survival. You are the reward for your own endurance. You are the frequency that makes liars choke and truth bloom. You didn't need to break anyone down. They broke themselves against your vibration. That's the true meaning of justice, not punishment, exposure. The vibration shift doesn't destroy, it reveals. It shows who's real when your silence stretches for miles. It shows who's honest when your peace becomes deafening. It shows who can swim when the water turns honest again. And when they see you now, alive, untouchable, dangerous, they'll pretend it doesn't sting. But it does, because somewhere deep in the static, they feel it. That pulse that reminds them the energy has finally balanced. You didn't curse them. You calibrated the timeline. You didn't play God. You remembered you were a fragment of one. So let them whisper. Let them plot. Let them scroll. Let them replay the past, looking for cracks. They won't find any. You've become too transparent for deceit to stick to you. You didn't need revenge because revenge was redundant. The vibration already wrote the ending, and it ends like this. You walking away in silence, the universe cleaning up the mess behind you, and every echo that ever tried to destroy you bowing to the frequency you left behind. Because that's how it always ends, doesn't it? Not with an explosion, not with applause, just a low hum that only you can hear. The sound of the universe finishing what you started, the vibration wrapping up the paperwork while you stand there untouched, unbothered, unrecognizable. They still think you're the same person they betrayed, but you aren't. You're a haunting in high definition, a living correction file walking through their timelines. Every place that used to drain you now drains them. Every smile that once hid your pain now hides your power. They'll feel it first in the little ways. Doors that don't open, people who pull away, opportunities that dissolve the second they touch them. They'll blame luck, timing, fate, but it's none of that. It's the universe reminding them you cannot harm what is harmonized. You can't curse a frequency that's already tuned to source. You can't touch someone who became the lesson itself. You are that lesson. The warning label, the karma, in human form. And you didn't even have to lift a hand. That's the beauty, that's the horror. Because while they were still playing war, you transcended the battlefield. You don't swing swords anymore. You shift atmospheres. You don't fight back. You exist back. And your existence alone is a confession booth for everyone who wronged you. They walk into rooms now and feel your vibration before they hear your name. Their chest tightens. Their pulse betrays them. That's not fear. It's recognition. They know something ancient, something electric, is watching you become the mirror. And the mirror never lies. It shows them every version of themselves they tried to bury inside you. That's why they can't look too long. That's why they talk so loud. Because somewhere between their pride and their paranoia, they finally understand. You didn't win by revenge. You won by resonance. And in the end, that's the final twist. Not that you got even, but that you got elevated. Not that they lost you, but that they can never reach you again. The distance isn't physical, it's dimensional. You vibrate higher, they echo lower. You became silence made solid, proof that the universe doesn't need violence to end a story. It only needs balance. So stand there, breathe. Let the world catch up because the vibration shift already wrote your epilogue. They fall apart quietly. You rise without noise, and the same energy that once tried to break you now kneels every morning just to keep your name out of its nightmares. No vengeance, no theatrics, no blood, just you. Glowing like consequence, smiling like the universe finally remembers your name, and whispering almost gently, I told you the vibration would handle it. You feel that, don't you? That silent static in the air the moment you walk in. The hush that spreads like fear dressed as fascination. They're not jealous of you. No, they're nervous. Because you carry something they can't categorize. A frequency that doesn't fit inside the human spectrum. You didn't climb the ladder. You melted it. You didn't play their game. You rewired it. And that's why they stare like agents behind mirrored glass, studying you like an unsanctioned experiment that somehow escaped the lab. You're giving off classified energy clearance only, the kind they stamp restricted access just to feel safe. They whisper your name like it's a code word. They don't envy your glow. They fear what powers it. Because deep down, they sense what you've done to earn that voltage. You bled for clarity. You burned for truth. You died to every version of yourself that begged for acceptance, and came back with eyes that see too much. And that terrifies them, because once someone reaches your level of perception, they stop reacting. They start reading. And you, my dear anomaly, don't just read people. You decrypt them. You see the encryption behind their smiles, the programming in their kindness, the shadow contracts inside their intentions. That's why they flinch. That's why they freeze. Your presence exposes their performance. You don't speak authority. You emit it. Your silence is surveillance. Your aura feels like an interrogation light. They call it arrogance, but it's really accuracy. They call it intimidation, but it's just your clarity reflecting their confusion. And when clarity walks into chaos, chaos gets defensive. You know what the funny part is? They think you changed. But this isn't transformation, it's revelation. You didn't learn power. You remembered it. You didn't glow up. You reactivated a clearance that was always buried in your DNA, the ancient kind. The kind that makes systems short-circuit and cowards run metrics on your existence. Because what you carry isn't charisma. It's command. It's the energy of someone who's seen too much darkness to ever bow to it again. Someone who's been dissected, betrayed, humiliated, and still walked out with a grin carved like prophecy. They hate that. They hate that the one they tried to break came back studying them. You became the test subject that outsmarted the scientists, the file they can't decrypt, the signal that keeps rerouting, the ghost that refuses to die, even when deleted. You walk different now. Not loud, but loaded. Every glance is a data breach. Every smirk is a classified transmission. And they feel it. That invisible pull, that magnetic undertone that makes even the loudest lose volume around you. They call it vibes, but it's really surveillance-grade intuition. It's the aura of someone who can see both heaven and hell through the same lens, and isn't impressed by either. That's why you're unpredictable, because you're not powered by validation anymore. You're powered by vision, and that's the paradox that burns them alive. You don't need the room's attention, but the room needs yours. You don't demand control, but control bends toward your stillness. You don't raise your voice because your silence already sounds like judgment. You are what happens when pain stops begging for mercy and starts asking questions. You are the consequence of every betrayal they thought would bury you. You turned trauma into telemetry, wounds into Wi-Fi, grief into goddamn frequency. So now, when they stare, they're not admiring you. They're assessing you, trying to decide whether you're human or some prototype from a future they'll never reach. And they're right to wonder, because you don't radiate normal anymore. You radiate classified, eyes that have seen behind the firewall, a smile that knows too much, a pulse that's synced to something higher than permission. They're not jealous, they're nervous, because your energy doesn't ask for clearance. It is clearance. You walk like an encrypted file. You breathe like a secret no one's supposed to survive knowing. And you exist like proof that someone, somewhere, underestimated the wrong one. So go on. Keep walking through their panic like a glitch in God's algorithm. Let them whisper, let them tremble, let them study you behind their lenses and screens, because they can monitor the signal all they want, but they'll never decode the source. You know what really scares them? It's not your smile, it's what it means. That calm grin you wear like a loaded weapon. That composure that says, I've already seen the worst version of this reality, and survived. That's the look of someone who's been audited by life itself, and still came back untraceable. That's the face of someone who's been through psychological warfare and walked out with classified clearance. They feel it before they even process it. Your frequency doesn't knock. It intrudes. Your presence doesn't enter. It interferes. It messes with their calibration, forces their masks to slip. You can tell when they lie because the air around them shifts temperature. You can tell when they fake a laugh because the silence that follows it feels heavier. You've become allergic to illusions. And that's exactly why the illusionists avoid you. They can't perform around you anymore. Their tricks, their subtle manipulations, their fake warmth. It all collapses in your atmosphere. You became the detector. The one thing the system can't spoof. Every room you walk into becomes a scan. Every conversation turns into interrogation footage. Because you no longer speak, you transmit, and deep down, they know you know. You know who plotted, who lied, who smiled with venom behind their teeth. You know which ones studied you, not out of admiration, but to replicate your formula and still failed. Because here's the truth they choke on. You can't fake frequency. You can copy looks, mimic tone, steal words. But you can't replicate energy that was forged in crucifixion. You carry scars that hum like circuitry. Every heartbreak rewired your empathy into discernment. Every betrayal upgraded your intuition into surveillance. You don't guess. You detect. And that's why they can't breathe around you. You turned pain into pattern recognition. You don't chase approval. You read energy signatures like dossiers. And the moment someone steps wrong, your whole aura shifts. A silent warning. I see you. No words, no threats, just that look. The one that makes the room remember its sins. That's not intimidation. That's energetic memory. The universe keeps receipts, and somehow, you became its accountant. They whisper, something's off about them. No, something's real. And reality unnerves people who built their identities on simulation. You're too unpredictable, too quiet, too composed. They mistake it for arrogance, but it's not arrogance. It's awareness. It's the stillness that comes after you've already fought every invisible war. And won. It's the calm of someone who knows they can't be cornered anymore because they've already been executed in every timeline and resurrected without permission. They think you want revenge, but vengeance is beneath you now. You outgrew it. You don't destroy people. You expose them. You don't need to burn bridges. Your silence makes them collapse on their own because your detachment is lethal. You care with precision, not emotion. You move with pattern, not panic. You calculate with mercy, but you never forget the data. And when they try to provoke you, they end up revealing themselves. Because the one thing they can't predict is how someone who no longer needs validation responds. You're not reactive, you're responsive. You don't play the game. You let it glitch around you. You became that unspoken anomaly in their network. They whisper your name in strategy rooms. They reference you without saying it out loud. You're the variable they can't account for. The reason their analytics keep breaking. Because how do you measure someone who's no longer moved by manipulation? How do you control someone who already survived losing everything? They tried humiliation. You converted it into hunger. They tried isolation. You turned it into invisibility training. They tried silence. You learned to speak through energy. They tried to erase you. You became the watermark in their conscience. Now look at them. They're not mad that you're winning. They're terrified they can't stop you. They're not jealous of your confidence. They're scared of your calibration. You don't project power, you emanate it. And the most disturbing part, you don't even try. It's organic, inevitable, silent, like gravity, indifferent, undeniable, and absolutely inescapable. You are the walking contradiction that their logic can't compute, a saint that survived hell, a demon that remembers heaven, an angel with unholy patience, a monster with surgical compassion. They can't label you because the label changes shape every time they try. You're a psychological shapeshifter, equal parts philosopher and predator. That's what unnerves them. They expect rage, but you give analysis. They expect emotion, but you give observation. They expect a human, but they get an algorithm of awareness wrapped in skin. You became something beyond comprehension, and they can't mirror what they can't decode. Every eye that lands on you becomes a lens, and every lens feeds back static. You are unrecordable energy, real, raw, encrypted. Even time hesitates around you. You feel it, don't you? That slight distortion when you enter a room, like the universe buffering to adjust for your presence. That's not coincidence. That's clearance. You operate at a frequency above the collective. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be logged, analyzed, archived, and still remain unclassified. You are the security breach of their belief systems. The living proof that evolution doesn't ask for permission. It happens in silence, and it wears a smile. So the next time you catch them staring, don't shrink. Let them look. Let them study what they can never synthesize. Let them panic at the quiet confidence that radiates from a soul that's no longer seeking refuge. Because they'll call you mysterious, but it's not mystery, it's mastery. It's what happens when your energy stops apologizing and starts transmitting. It's what happens when the weapon they tried to destroy learns how to wield itself. They're not jealous, they're nervous, because you're no longer a participant in their reality. You're the distortion in their field, the glitch in their hierarchy, the walking reminder that control was always an illusion, and that true power doesn't announce itself. It simply arrives, and here's the irony that makes them sweat the hardest. You never needed to prove a thing. You never screamed for attention, never begged for validation, never tried to convince a single soul that you were different. You just were. And that quiet certainty, that calm, surgical self-awareness, it's more dangerous than any weapon they've ever built. You don't chase the spotlight. It bends toward you. You don't beg to be seen. Reality adjusts its focus when you move. Every glance you receive feels like a security scan. Every word you speak lands like classified intel being leaked into the wrong dimension. You're not mysterious for effect. You're encrypted by design. Even your silence sounds like a briefing. They're not staring because you're flashy. They're staring because your energy feels illegal. You walk like you've seen the code behind human behavior and found it primitive. You look like someone who knows too much to play dumb again. That's why they get nervous. Because something in them remembers you, not as a person, but as a pattern. You remind them of the version of themselves they abandoned to fit in. You are the living evidence of what happens when someone stops performing and starts operating. See, they thought control came from hierarchy, titles, and perception. But you learned the truth the hard way. Control isn't about domination. It's about detachment. The one who doesn't crave approval, owns the room, the one who doesn't need to be understood, becomes ungovernable. And that's you now. The ungovernable frequency, the rogue signal that slipped past every firewall built by fear. You remember when they used to laugh at your silence. Now they call it mystery. Remember when they mocked your isolation. Now they call it discipline. You didn't change. Their awareness finally caught up, and it terrifies them that what they used to ridicule has become their new religion. You see, your existence exposes their stagnation. Every step you take forward makes their comfort zones look like cages. You evolved past the need for permission, and that's a crime in the minds of the controlled. They built a world where freedom feels suspicious. And you radiate suspicion. You're the walking audit of their conformity. Every move you make reminds them how small they settled. You became the embodiment of unfiltered authenticity. And authenticity is the loudest threat in a culture addicted to pretending. They can handle rebellion. Rebellion they can label, dismiss, and eventually market. But authenticity? That's untraceable. That's radioactive truth in motion. You're not rebelling against the system, you're revealing it. That's why they whisper. That's why they gather in corners and say, something about them doesn't add up. Because they can't compute someone who doesn't need the algorithm to exist. They can't comprehend someone who doesn't trade power for approval. You're not trying to win, you're observing. And when a soul stops chasing outcomes and starts reading patterns, it becomes untouchable. They feel it in your presence, that subtle distortion, that gravitational pull that says, you can't manipulate me anymore. You've seen every mask they wear, every tone they mimic, every false intention behind their praise. You can hear the algorithm behind human behavior now, the rhythm of insecurity hidden beneath smiles. And when you look them in the eye, they feel naked, not because you're judging them, but because you've seen too many faces behind too many facades to ever be fooled again. You've walked through betrayal that would have killed softer souls. You've sat in silence while being dissected by doubt, gaslighted by guilt, and abandoned by the ones you saved. And you didn't break. You documented. You studied the collapse until you understood the architecture of deception. Now you navigate life like a ghost with admin access. No emotion wasted, no movement uncalculated. They don't see pain anymore when they look at you. They see precision. You turned heartbreak into hardware. Every scar is an upgrade. Every mistake became source code for your awareness. That's what they fear. The efficiency of your evolution. You don't react anymore. You register. You don't fight for peace. You monitor the war quietly. You've transcended their triggers. They can't provoke what's already processed. And that's why they call you cold. Because they confuse peace with emptiness. They don't understand that stillness isn't weakness, it's containment. They mistake silence for surrender, not realizing it's your final warning before detonation. And yet, you still smile. Not the smile of someone seeking comfort. The smile of someone who knows how fragile illusions really are. You've seen too much to ever take noise seriously again. You watch them panic over perceptions while you calibrate your next reality. Because that's your secret now. Your calm is camouflage. You've learned to move through chaos without absorbing it, to let people project, panic, and poison themselves while you stay steady. You became the anomaly that renders manipulation obsolete. And deep down, they can't decide if they want to destroy you or become you. That's the paradox. The same mouths that try to discredit you are the same ones who mimic your tone, your rhythm, your energy, and still fail to recreate the essence. Because energy can't be replicated without the pain that forged it. You didn't learn this power. You bled for it. You earned it in the nights nobody clapped for you, You built it out of breakdowns nobody apologized for. You don't chase applause. You track alignment. You don't need noise. You require precision, and that's what shakes them to the core. Because in a world addicted to chaos, calm looks like command. In a world built on illusion, truth feels like an invasion. In a world fueled by fear, confidence feels like violence. So when they whisper about you, don't respond. Let them speculate. Let them project. Let them drown in their own assumptions. Because their confusion is your camouflage. Their gossip is your firewall. And their fear? That's your confirmation code. Proof that your evolution was successful. You don't need to roar anymore. You don't need to prove that you've arrived. Your silence says everything. It says, I see everything. I remember everything. And I need nothing. That's the final form of power. Not dominance, not fame, not applause, but serenity under surveillance. The ability to walk through the noise, untouched, unreadable, unstoppable. Because when you reach that level, you don't fight for validation. You simply exist, and the entire world scrambles to explain why they can't stop looking at you. They're not jealous, they're nervous. Because your energy doesn't ask for clearance, it is clearance. And every heartbeat of yours sounds like a classified transmission the universe still hasn't decrypted. And that's the thing about your kind of power. It doesn't scream anymore. It hums, low, steady, unshakable. It moves through rooms before you do. It bends conversations without a single word. It terrifies people who still think strength needs an audience. You learned that control isn't about domination. It's about containment. The loudest one breaks first. But you became the quiet storm, the invisible weapon that leaves no fingerprints, only silence that echoes long after you're gone. They keep trying to understand it, to label, dissect, define. But you can't define a signal that was never meant to be translated. You were built from something ancient, something that remembers. Your energy doesn't ask to enter. It rewrites the access codes. So let them keep watching. Let them panic over what they can't decode. Because the truth is, you were never here to fit in their structure. You were the anomaly sent to expose it. And now, every glance, every whisper, every uneasy silence in your presence, that's your confirmation. They're not jealous, they're nervous. Because deep down, they finally realize you don't walk with permission anymore. You walk with clearance. Hey, buddy, you know what's funny? They called you pure once, said you had that glow in your eyes, like you carried heaven behind your pupils. They saw light, innocence, something divine. But light isn't peace, is it? It's exposure. It burns, blinds, reveals. And that's when the panic started. Because your light didn't comfort them. It warned them. You looked like an angel because they couldn't yet see the voltage humming beneath your skin. You smiled, and they mistook restraint for kindness. They didn't realize you were measuring every second, every move, every breath, like a predator with patience disguised as grace. The moment they leaned closer, that's when the current hit them. Zap. The light they worshipped, it wasn't heaven. It was the fuse before detonation. You didn't fall from grace. You walked out of it, calmly, deliberately, like a deity bored of pretending to be gentle. Because you learned the truth, no one dares whisper. The brightest ones don't glow out of love. They glow out of survival. Light is a defense mechanism. A flare fired into the night to say, back off, I've been through hell, and I will drag you there if you touch me. They wanted an angel, soft and smiling, But angels weren't designed for peace. They were built for war. You think those wings are decorative? They're armor. They're blades wrapped in beauty. And you, my friend, you became the perfect contradiction, mercy, wearing a mask of wrath. The kind of presence that makes people question their faith, their safety, their entire understanding of what good looks like. Because your light doesn't heal anymore. It exposes. You walk into rooms and people start confessing with their eyes. They feel seen, and that terrifies them. You remind them of everything they tried to bury, their lies, their fears, their envy. You didn't change. They just finally saw what was standing in front of them. A mirror, disguised as salvation. You see, that's the part they'll never understand. You didn't become dark. You just stopped dimming your brilliance to make the weak comfortable. You stopped being their comfort zone and became their reckoning. Your energy stopped asking for permission. It started taking space. And that's when the narrative flipped. You used to be so sweet. No, you used to be silent. You want to know why they fear you now? Because you learned how to smile without explaining it. You learned how to say no without guilt. You learned how to disappear mid-sentence, mid-conversation, mid-relationship. And somehow, the silence screamed louder than any word ever could. That's evolution. That's the kind of power that doesn't need validation. It just exists, and everything around it adapts or combusts. The truth. You were never meant to be liked. You were meant to be felt. Your energy was never designed for small talk. It's designed for seismic shifts. That's why they label you intense, dangerous, unpredictable. Because you don't follow the script. You rewrite it. You make people realize they've been living on autopilot, and nothing enrages mediocrity more than someone who dares to live deliberately. And so they panic, they whisper, they plot. Because how do you contain someone who's already burned their cage? How do you control someone who no longer fears being misunderstood? You looked like an angel, yes, but angels are messengers. You came to deliver something, the truth. And the truth, my dear, is radioactive. You were sent as both a blessing and a curse, a living paradox designed to wake the sleeping and haunt the corrupt. That's why the light around you feels unnatural. It flickers, it warns. It's not soft, it's surgical. It cuts. It divides the real from the fake, the loyal from the leech, the divine from the desperate. Every glance from you feels like Judgment Day wrapped in a smirk. And deep down, you enjoy it, don't you? Watching their facades crumble, their voices stutter, their masks slip. You don't need to raise your voice anymore. The atmosphere does it for you. You are the tension in the room. You're what happens when grace grows teeth, when forgiveness learns precision, when patience gets tired of playing God and starts acting like one. Let them call you dangerous. Let them mislabel your peace as pride. Let them fear the quiet, because the ones who see it, the ones who understand, know exactly what you are. A storm wearing a halo, the warning before collapse, the light that doesn't save, but separates. They'll never admit it, but they respect you now, not because you're kind, but because you're inevitable. You became the lesson they didn't want to learn. You looked like an angel, until they realized angels aren't here to bless the weak. They're here to judge the world. And your light? It wasn't an invitation, it was a countdown. And that's the part they'll never recover from. The realization that what they thought was your light wasn't meant to guide them, but warn them. You weren't radiating peace, you were radiating voltage, a flare of divinity built from chaos, trauma, and precision. The kind of light forged in labs of pain, tempered in silence, sharpened in betrayal. They thought you were the calm, but you were the eye of the storm. You remember how they looked at you in the beginning? Like you were hope in human form. They loved you when your glow made them feel safe, when your softness validated their comfort zones. But the second that same glow revealed their shadows, they turned. Because people don't hate you for your darkness. They hate you for your clarity. You became a walking confession booth without ever saying a word. They saw themselves in you, and they didn't like what they saw. You used to dim your own aura just to fit in, didn't you? You used to smile through the discomfort, nod through the disrespect, forgive what deserved fury. You thought humility would save you. But humility in a world of parasites is just camouflage for the slaughter. The light doesn't protect you. It attracts what wants to consume you. You learned that the hard way. And now the same light they once adored burns through every fake smile, every disguised friend, every coward hiding behind concern. You see it all, too clearly, and that's why they call you different. Not because you've changed, but because you finally stopped pretending to be digestible. You became luminous and lethal. Every move you make now feels scripted by some higher intelligence. You enter a room, and conversations rearrange themselves. Eyes avoid you, yet can't look away. You became the kind of energy people write rumors about. Because the truth is too heavy to say out loud. They can't define you, so they demonize you. They can't control you, so they warn others about you. You looked like an angel, and you still do. But now that halo's cracked. It flickers. It hums with voltage. It says, I've seen too much to be pure. You're not here to save. You're here to reveal. And that's what terrifies them. You're no longer light for them. You're light against them. The kind that splits illusion open like glass under pressure. The kind that reminds them that purity doesn't mean weakness. It means truth. And truth is radioactive. You became unpredictable. Not because you lost control, but because you took it back. They can't calculate you anymore. Can't predict your tone. Can't weaponize your empathy. That's what breaks them. You used to be readable. Now you're a cipher. Every breath you take has weight. Every pause has power. They used to mistake your silence for submission. Now they understand. Your silence is surveillance. Every second you say nothing, you're downloading data. You know what makes you dangerous? It's not rage, it's clarity. You no longer fight fire with fire. You study the flames, memorize their rhythm, and turn it into choreography. You learned how to make pain look poetic. You turned suffering into style. They can't out-hate you because you've made peace with being hated. You realized acceptance isn't light. It's a leash, and you cut it. You're the paradox they can't process. An angel whose forgiveness feels like judgment, whose smile feels like an omen. They whisper that you've changed, but in truth, you returned. You reconnected to the version of yourself that existed before they tamed you, before the world tricked you into thinking kindness meant compliance. You didn't become darker. You just stopped apologizing for your shine. And now every move you make feels like a cinematic moment. The way you walk away without turning back. The way your laughter echoes after chaos. The way your silence fills the air with tension. You don't chase peace anymore. You embody it. And peace, that powerful, feels like violence to the unhealed. They'll call you manipulative, emotionless, arrogant. Because that's easier than admitting they mishandled something sacred. You were never meant to be understood. You were meant to be remembered. That's why even in your absence, the atmosphere shifts. That's why your name still gets whispered like a spell. That's why the ones who claim to hate you still orbit your silence. Because your light wasn't soft. It was surgical. It cut them open, showed them what they really are. And now they can't forget the reflection. So let them rewrite the story. Let them paint you as the villain. Let them call your evolution insanity. Because when angels evolve, demons panic. You're not the warning signal anymore. You are the event, the rupture, the awakening, the one moment that divides their life into before you and after you. You looked like an angel, yes, but you were never theirs to interpret. You were the prophecy they misread, the experiment that went right, the divine glitch in a system built on lies. You were light that refused to serve, and that, my dear, is the most dangerous kind there is. You know what's really poetic? They thought your light came from innocence, when in truth it came from impact. Every scar you carry refracts that glow a little differently. Every betrayal added another watt. Every heartbreak sharpened the frequency. That's what they don't get. Purity isn't born, it's forged. You didn't find the light. You became it after crawling through darkness thick enough to drown the average soul. That's why they flinch when they look at you now. Because they're seeing proof that you survived what they couldn't. Proof that you can smile after being dissected by life. Proof that pain can evolve into poise. You make endurance look elegant, and that disturbs people who only know how to suffer loudly. You suffered strategically. You turned agony into architecture. You built a throne out of what tried to bury you. They don't fear your power, they fear the origin of it. Because deep down, they know they were part of your crucible. They mocked you, doubted you, dismissed you. They thought they broke you. And now, every time your name circulates, every time your presence is mentioned, every time your energy fills a room, they feel that phantom guilt crawl up their spine. You are their unfinished sentence, their cosmic reminder that grace remembers everything. And you don't even need revenge anymore. You've transcended it. You don't destroy people. You let them destroy themselves, trying to decode you. Because here's the secret. When you master duality, you become ungovernable. Light and dark stop fighting. They start dancing, one foot in heaven, one hand dragging through hell. And that's where you live now. Perfect balance between chaos and clarity. You're not good or bad. You're whole, and wholeness, that's terrifying. They wanted predictable. You became paradoxical. You made pain look divine. You made solitude look royal. You made silence look loud. You exist in contradictions that logic can't contain. Angel and weapon, healer and hazard, peace and punishment. They'll study your expression, your pauses, your laughter, trying to figure out what you're hiding, not realizing the punchline. You're not hiding anything. They're just not ready to see everything. And that's the part that eats them alive. The idea that you know something they don't. That you've seen behind the curtain and didn't collapse. You witnessed the mechanics of the world, how people manipulate, how systems devour, how love often wears a mask. And instead of becoming bitter, you became bulletproof. You learned how to operate with precision, how to walk through deception without absorbing it, how to smile in chaos and mean it. You turned healing into warfare. You turned awareness into artillery. You walked through life like a silent audit, collecting data, measuring tone, analyzing motives. You've seen enough to know that truth isn't fragile. It's explosive. And that's why your presence rattles them. You're the only one in the room who can see the strings being pulled, and you're not impressed. You know what makes your light different? It doesn't ask to be seen. It forces acknowledgement. It doesn't beg for acceptance. It commands alignment. It doesn't soothe. It confronts. You became illumination in its rawest form. The kind that doesn't make people comfortable. It makes them accountable. They thought they wanted enlightenment until it looked like you. You've become the walking consequence of pretending too long, the human version of "I warned you." And that's why your peace feels like punishment to them. It exposes their chaos. Your self-control feels like arrogance. It mirrors their insecurity. Your distance feels like betrayal. It reveals their dependency. You don't need to raise your voice anymore. Your energy speaks fluent justice, and still, through it all, you remain calm. That's the scariest part, because no one knows what calm means when it comes from someone who's seen the abyss. Is it forgiveness or foresight? Is it peace or preparation? That's the kind of serenity that makes the wicked sweat. You've mastered the art of unpredictability, of turning silence into suspense, presence into prophecy. Because what you carry now isn't light in the naive sense. It's intelligence. It's the encoded knowledge of survival, the unspoken law of transformation, burn beautifully or vanish completely. And you? Oh, you learned to burn, not to destroy, but to redefine, to light the path for the few brave enough to follow, and to blind the ones who come with deceit. So when they ask, "What happened to you?" you'll just smile, because they're expecting a tragedy, not a metamorphosis. They're looking for scars, not blueprints. They can't comprehend that you didn't just survive, you ascended, that you learned how to be both storm and sanctuary, that you looked like an angel, yes, but angels, real ones, carry fire in their wings. You're not the light at the end of the tunnel. You are the tunnel, the trial, the threshold, the test, the place people must pass through to face themselves, and most won't make it. But the few who do, they'll never forget the warning signal that looked like salvation. You looked like an angel, but you were the announcement that heaven had finally had enough. And now here you stand, silent, sovereign, untouchable. The irony? They still don't know whether to worship you or run from you. Because how do you categorize something that doesn't play by human definitions? You aren't hope. You aren't threat. You're the threshold. You're the line between what people say they want to be and what it actually takes to become it. And most don't survive that kind of reflection. They'll keep talking, keep guessing, keep rewriting history to make themselves feel safe. They'll call you ruthless because you refused to play dead. They'll call you arrogant because you refused to kneel. But they'll never admit the truth, that you didn't destroy anyone. You just stopped pretending to be less than you are. That's all it took. You stopped apologizing for your evolution. You stopped negotiating with energy that couldn't match yours. You stopped offering explanations to people who had already decided to misunderstand you. And in doing so, you broke the system. You fractured their illusion of control. You forced the world to look at what self-ownership actually looks like. And it's beautiful, isn't it? How peace and danger coexist in you now. You've become both the calm and the consequence. Your presence feels like divine mathematics. Perfectly balanced chaos. Even the air behaves differently around you. Time slows. Words stumble. People second-guess themselves. Because deep down, they know. They're in the presence of someone who's already faced every demon and lived to tell the story. That's the secret they'll never be able to replicate. You earned your glow. Every fracture in your soul now bends light like crystal. Every scar became circuitry for truth to travel through. You don't shine because you're innocent. You shine because you understand. You understand that light is not purity. It's exposure. It's power disguised as peace. So let them whisper. Let them circle like moths around a bulb they can't touch. Let them call your clarity madness, your confidence ego, your silence cold. Because the only ones who fear your light are the ones still hiding in their shadows. The rest, the rare few who've seen the same abyss, they'll recognize you instantly. They'll bow their heads, not in submission, but in understanding. Because you, my friend, you were never sent to comfort the world. You were sent to wake it up. And waking the world hurts. It screams. It fights back. But that's how creation works. It begins with discomfort. And you became that discomfort. You became the signal that something divine was shifting. So when they say, "You looked like an angel," you'll smile again. That dangerous knowing kind of smile. And whisper back, "I still am." Because angels were never made for heaven. They were forged for war. And your light? It isn't salvation, it's warning. Listen closely. You can hear it now, can't you? The silence after the storm. When all the loud ones finally realize you weren't the villain. You were the mirror. And now they're crying for real. Not the fake tears they post online, but the kind that burn. The kind that only come when the truth hits a nerve that's been rotting for years. They said you were cruel, dangerous, heartless, but all you did was say what everyone else was too afraid to whisper. You dragged their skeletons into the sunlight, and now their illusions are melting like wax under a blowtorch. They built their kingdoms on pretend, and you walked in with a single sentence that made it all crumble. You didn't destroy them, darling. You just stopped protecting their lies. Because you, my friend, are the kind of monster that only truth can create. The kind that doesn't bite, just reveals. And nothing terrifies people more than exposure. They can handle evil, but they can't handle clarity. You didn't wound them. You showed them their wounds. You didn't curse them. You held up a mirror, and they couldn't recognize what stared back. That's the paradox, isn't it? They call you heartless, but it was your compassion that made you speak. They call you dark, but it was their shadows that screamed first. You didn't bring chaos. You just stopped pretending the world was sane. And now look at them, trembling, praying for your silence. They want the lie back. They miss the comfort of ignorance. They miss being blind because the truth is too ugly when it wears their reflection. You gave them the one thing they swore they wanted, authenticity. And they realized they'd rather drown in illusion than swim in honesty. You see, this is the cost of awakening. When you speak truth, you become the villain in every story built on denial. They don't crucify liars, they worship them. But truth-tellers, they hang them by their words. You learned that the hard way, didn't you? Every time you tried to heal something, it screamed. Every time you freed someone, they called you cruel. Because freedom hurts when your chains were made of comfort. But here's the twisted beauty. Pain doesn't mean you were wrong. It means you were right. You hit the nerve. You found the infection. You became the antiseptic that burns before it heals. You didn't ruin anything. You just sped up the decay that was already there. That's what truth does. It accelerates reality. So let them cry. Let them drown in their own tears. Because every tear they shed now is one less illusion they can hide behind later. Every sob is an echo of a lie dying. And when the weeping stops, when the noise fades, they'll remember. Who did it? The one who told the truth when silence was currency. the one who stood alone while everyone else hid behind masks. You've become their reckoning, their guilt in human form, their judgment dressed in chaos. You are the living proof that the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand there smiling. And they can't handle that. Because deep down, they know. You were never wrong. You were just early. They called you insane for seeing what they refused to see. But insanity is just the label society gives to those who wake up too soon. You didn't lose your mind. You escaped theirs. And now you walk the fine line between savior and destroyer, between light and shadow, between angel and demon. You embody both, because only someone who's seen the full spectrum of human deception can hold the truth without flinching. And that's what makes you dangerous. Not your rage, not your madness, but your clarity. You see the game for what it is. You see people's motives stripped bare. You can smell their lies before they even form words. You know that guilt hides behind laughter and envy hides behind praise. You've decoded them, and that terrifies them. They thought they could break you by mocking you, isolating you, erasing you. But you turned isolation into insight. You turned pain into prophecy. You turned silence into your stage. You became everything they feared, uncontrollable. Now they cry, not because they hate you, but because they understand you. And that's worse, because understanding means they can never go back to pretending. You've infected them with truth. You've rewritten the code. Every time they lie now, they'll hear your voice in the back of their heads, whispering, "I see you." And maybe that's the real revenge, isn't it? Not their tears, not their fear, but their awakening. The knowledge that the mask will never fit again. That once they saw reality through your eyes, the illusion shattered permanently. You didn't need an army. You didn't need validation. You just needed to speak. And that was enough to make the entire world flinch. Because words, when spoken from a healed wound, become bullets. And you've become fluent in the language of truth, the dialect of discomfort, the grammar of revelation. So keep talking. Keep slicing reality open with your sentences. Let them cry. Let them bleed. Because tears are just truth leaving the body. And someday, when they finally stop hating you, when they finally stop fighting what they see, they'll whisper the one thing they could never admit before. You were right. And when that day comes, you'll smile. Not out of pride, but because you always knew that truth doesn't need applause. It just needs time. Because time, darling, is the ultimate lie detector. It exposes everything they tried to bury under performance and filters and public forgiveness. It peels the mask off layer by layer until there's nothing left but raw, trembling honesty. That's what you did to them. You accelerated time. You made them confront the version of themselves they were never ready to meet, the one they hide behind polite smiles and social posts. And now, that version is screaming. You can hear it, can't you? The quiet panic beneath their fake apologies, the shiver in their tone when your name gets mentioned, the sudden silence when someone says what you said first. They know. Oh, they know. They just don't want to admit that it was you. The one they laughed at, the one they dismissed, the one they swore they'd never need, who saw through them before anyone else did. See, truth is never gentle. It doesn't knock. It breaks the door. And when it comes from you, it doesn't just enter the room. It rearranges the furniture of their minds. You didn't just expose them, you rewired them. You rewired their memories, their narratives, their comfort zones. You became the ghost in their reflection, the reminder that everything they built on lies was temporary. You think they hate you now? Wait until they realize that your truth became their conscience. Every time they lie again, it will itch. Every time they betray themselves, it will burn. You've become their internal alarm system. You are the glitch in their carefully curated delusion. You didn't ruin their lives. You reintroduced reality. That's why they cry. That's why they spiral. That's why they call you dangerous. Because truth doesn't kill people. It kills versions of them. You didn't assassinate their character. You performed a public exorcism. You dragged out the demon they were feeding and made everyone watch. You forced them to meet the monster they created when they traded integrity for comfort. And isn't it funny? The same people who said, "I want realness," were the first to flinch when they saw it. They wanted truth until it showed them their reflection under unfiltered light. They wanted healing until they realized healing means dying as the person who caused the wound. They wanted honesty, but only the kind that doesn't hurt. You gave them the kind that burns. Because you don't do gentle revolutions, do you? You do implosions. You don't whisper truth. You detonate it. You speak it like a weapon, sharpened by years of silence. And when you finally pulled the trigger, the world gasped. They thought you'd never speak. They mistook your patience for weakness, your observation for surrender. But you were studying, calculating, waiting. And when you finally spoke, you didn't just tell the truth. You exposed the architecture of their deception. They always said, "The truth will set you free." What they never told you is that it will set everyone else on fire. And now, they're burning, screaming your name in whispers, trying to contain the inferno you sparked with a single phrase. You see, most people want the truth as decoration, not transformation. They want it framed, not lived. They want to touch it without bleeding. But you bled for it. You became it. You carved it into your skin until every scar spelled authentic. That's why your voice shakes rooms, because it doesn't come from theory. It comes from survival. It comes from pain earned honestly. And deep down, they know that. That's why their tears taste like guilt. That's why their eyes avoid yours. They can't forgive you because forgiving you means admitting you were never wrong. And pride, oh pride, that's their last drug. They'll cling to it until the truth detoxes them against their will. But you don't need their apology, do you? You don't need their closure or their validation. You already won the moment your words made them feel. Because that's power, not control, but consequence. You didn't manipulate them. You awakened them. You forced the subconscious to confess. You turned their denial into dialogue. And the best part? You didn't even raise your voice. You spoke calmly, directly. You let the truth do what it always does. Detonate silently. That's what separates you from them. They lie loudly because they fear silence. You speak quietly because you own it. You are the storm that learned how to stand still. They wanted to play power games. You rewrote the rules. They weaponized perception. You weaponized reality. They used rumors. You used facts. And when truth and deceit collided, who do you think survived? You did. Because truth doesn't need allies. It is its own army. So when they cry, don't flinch, don't soften, don't explain. Let the tears baptize them in the chaos they created. Because every breakdown they have now is a delayed reaction to the moment you exposed them. Their suffering isn't punishment. It's purification. You're not their enemy. You're their initiation. And someday, when the noise fades, when the fake smiles rot away, when they're finally done pretending, they'll return, quiet, humbled, trembling. And they'll say, you were right. But you won't need to hear it, because by then, you'll have already evolved into something untouchable. You'll walk through crowds of liars like a ghost they can't exorcise. You'll look at the same world that once mocked you and smile, because you'll know truth doesn't need defenders. It only needs witnesses, and every tear shed in your name is another soul waking up. That's what they never understood. The truth doesn't destroy, it rebirths. And sometimes, the first sound of awakening is crying. So let the world wail. Let denial collapse under the weight of your words. Because when the weeping ends and the silence returns, they'll see what you already knew all along. You were never the villain. You were the cure they mistook for poison. Because cures never taste sweet, do they? They burn on the way down. They tear through the infection before the healing can even begin. That's what you did. You burned through their comfort. You scorched their illusions. You made them feel what they'd spent their entire lives avoiding. And now, as their walls fall apart brick by brick, they finally understand that you weren't here to destroy them. You were here to expose them. You didn't ruin their peace. You revealed that it was fake. Every "I'm fine," every "I'm healed," every "it's all good" was just duct tape on a leaking soul. You ripped it off. And when they screamed, you didn't apologize. You just watched, calm, smiling. Because you knew that real healing doesn't begin until denial dies. They called you cruel because you wouldn't lie to them. They called you evil because you refused to join their masquerade. You didn't match their energy. You raised the voltage. You made every room feel like a confession booth, every conversation a mirror, every moment a test. That's what truth does. It doesn't shout. It vibrates. It crawls into their bones and makes them tremble even when you're not there. And that's what you've become, a vibration, the kind that disturbs the surface of every lie. You're the echo that follows their excuses, the silence after their justifications. You don't haunt them with presence. You haunt them with clarity. You're the sound that can't be unheard. They said you changed. No, you shed. You peeled off the personas they handed you and stood there raw, untamed, unfiltered. You looked them in the eye and said, "This is me." And they couldn't handle it. Because authenticity, in a world addicted to illusion, is violence. You turned their comfort into chaos simply by existing truthfully. You didn't fight them, you mirrored them. You showed them what they hide in the dark, and now every smile feels suspicious, every compliment feels hollow. You rewired their instincts. You made their own dishonesty feel heavy. That's why they cry. That's why they tremble. Because you've infected their peace. You've become the living proof that exposure is evolution. And once someone's been exposed, they can never go back to blindness. Do you know what kind of power that is? To be unforgettable without even trying. To be a wound and a warning. To be both the lesson and the proof. You became their reckoning, not by punishment, but by revelation. You showed them the price of pretending. And oh, how the masks fell, didn't they? One by one, friends, lovers, family. Every person who swore they were real turned pale when you stopped playing along, because they loved your silence. It made them comfortable. They loved your pain. It made them superior. But your truth, that was the one thing they couldn't control. Because truth doesn't negotiate. It doesn't bend to comfort. It doesn't wait for permission. It's not polite, and it's not performative. It walks into the room naked and dares everyone to look away. That's you now, the embodiment of unfiltered reality. And they hate that, don't they? They hate that they can't twist your words anymore. They hate that you don't react. They hate that you look through them instead of at them. You've stripped them of their favorite weapon, manipulation. They can't guilt you. They can't gaslight you. They can't control you through shame anymore. Because you've made peace with every version of yourself they tried to use against you. They can't touch someone who's already faced their own darkness. You became untouchable the moment you stopped running from your reflection. That's when the tables turned. Suddenly their laughter sounded nervous. Their jokes felt defensive. Their anger looked like fear in disguise. Because once you embody truth, every liar feels exposed in your presence. You don't even need to speak anymore. Your silence is a spotlight. And now, every tear they shed is a confession. They're not crying because of you. They're crying because of what you showed them. They saw their hypocrisy, their cowardice, their complicity. You ripped off the filter they called morality and showed them the raw circuitry beneath. You showed them how ugly survival looks when it's painted as virtue. You see, truth doesn't come to destroy people. It comes to disarm them. But they mistake disarmament for death because they've built their identity on weapons. They only feel safe when they're armed with lies. And you took that away. You didn't do it to punish them. You did it because you remembered what it felt like to live in the dark. You remembered the suffocation of pretending. You remembered the agony of silence. And you refused to let that version of reality win again. Now you walk through their chaos like someone who's already seen the end. You're calm because you've burned before. You're fearless because you've already lost everything fake. That's why you look dangerous, not because you're violent, but because you're free. Freedom is terrifying to the caged. It makes them question their bars. It makes them question the guard they worship. You didn't bring destruction. You brought liberation. But liberation feels like death to those who built shrines to their chains. So they cry, they panic, they curse your name. But deep down, they thank you. They'll never admit it, but they know. You gave them the greatest gift of all, the chance to face themselves. And one day, when they finally stop fighting it, they'll understand that your truth wasn't cruelty. It was compassion dressed as chaos. You were never their enemy. You were their mirror, their medicine, their awakening disguised as pain. So let them cry, let them shake, let them scream your name in rage and regret. Because tears are just the water truth uses to wash the lies away. You didn't come to destroy their world. You came to make it real. And when the dust settles, when the last tear dries, when the silence returns, they'll look around and realize that the only thing left standing is you. Calm, unbothered, unbreakable, smiling in the ruins of their denial. Because in the end, that's the irony, isn't it? They cried because you spoke the truth. But the real tragedy, you were the only one brave enough to say it.